Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us at our second annual Maestro Construction and Infrastructure Conference. I'm so excited about this session. Today, we're going to be talking about diversity and inclusion. I think it's a topic that doesn't get talked about enough. So when I was planning the presentations, I knew we had to have a session on this. And so I'd like to introduce our panel for today. We have Ms. Ellen Ward, Diversity and Inclusion Manager for Joeris General Contractors. And we have Ms. Victoria Rodriguez, Executive Director of HCA de San Antonio. So thank you both for joining me today. There are so many people out there who hear the words diversity and inclusion and they get scared. They don't, they think of these conversations as uncomfortable. And we all know that because they're uncomfortable, we really should create space so that we have these difficult talks. And they're really not that difficult, I think, but they do need to be had. So let's start with the basics. Can each of you tell me about yourselves, introduce yourselves, and a little about your role, how long you've been there, and what it entails? So we'll go ahead and start with Victoria.
Oh, okay. I was deferring to Ellen. Always deferring to Ellen. Hi, my name is Victoria Rodriguez. I am the Executive Director of the Hispanic Contractors Association de San Antonio. I have been in this role now just a little over a year. I did come from the private sector, but I'm just really happy in the nonprofit space, getting to work with fellow nonprofits like Maestro and also Ellen and Joeris, who are huge supporters. So that is what I do.
My name is Ellen Ward. I am the Diversity and Inclusion Manager for Joeris General Contractors. Been doing this about 9 years. And we're based in San Antonio, but we're all over the state. And luckily, the entire state of Texas is interested in this topic. So I've been able to work with all of our markets in the seat.
Perfect. And so just to dive a little deeper, in the Hispanic Contractors Association, how long has this association been in existence?
So we have been around, this is our 21st year, and our mission essentially is to promote and support the small minority, women, and veteran-owned businesses in the construction industry and those that support the construction industry. So just a lot going on there. We try to cover, both the educational component, OSHA, CPR, Stop the Bleed. That's actually the name of the class. And helping encourage certification, speaking to businesses about that. And then, the other realm, the more fun side, the networking, the events. So we cover quite the gamut.
And Ellen, we actually had a question before the session even started about, let's see, Ms. Crystal Royal asked, what is supplier diversity?
What is supplier diversity? So, I mean, that could be several things. In Crystal's company, they look at it at a construction standpoint as well. But then they're also looking at everything, from building the store to what's in the store, what's on the shelves, what holds the stuff that's on the shelves, the people that work there, etc. But with us in particular, we really try to make sure our subcontractors are owned in a diverse setting. The manpower is diverse as well when it comes to building. And that just means diversity. We don't want one of one group. We don't want one of one gender. We don't want everybody to think the same. I mean, diversity of thought creates the best amount of productivity. Studies prove it. So it's definitely a lot of things. Very big open-ended question. I love it.
I know. And so I guess that leads into, because this isn't, you said that you have been in your position, Ellen, for 9 years now. So it's not that this is a fairly new concept. It's been out there, right? but it's getting a lot of attention in the recent couple of years. It's really been out there. And so a lot of people don't really know what it means, right? Like, what is supplier diversity? So what are some basic diversity and inclusion concepts, terms that we need to know?
Well, okay, so I want to talk about this from a business standpoint and then also as a human being standpoint. So from a business standpoint, there are some terms and information that I actually myself have just recently learned. I feel like in the last year and a half, we've been really focusing on this and trying to do research and seeing where these things stem and where they've grown and started. And there are programs out there that encourage businesses to track diversity, to make sure that they have diverse people on their projects. These are great programs. They're not new. They're not new. I'm reading books about how they were started since, World War II, and they were to help with the disparity of class. There was extremely wealthy and extremely poor. So they put together these programs in order to help create a middle class, which is what makes America great. And those programs were not necessarily including everyone. So there was a large number of people who were excluded from these programs, these houses, these jobs, these positions. And so now I feel that a lot of these other programs, government specifically, and public sector, public money, are trying to correct that mistake. So they're trying to make sure the people who were left out in the programs at the very beginning are able to be included in them now. Because some people would say, well, I worked hard, this, that, and the other. It's like, well, there is a generational effect. It's domino. We're inheriting what we got from our families, our mother's father's father. So it's not necessarily something that is just going to be fixed because you work hard. Sometimes there are opportunities that need to be given to other people and encouraged with other people who might not be used to being around diverse people. Some people are around only one type of person, and they're not used to saying, oh, I forgot, I didn't realize that I'm not including. And that's where that unconscious bias comes in. It's a really popular term right now. And I'm glad, because I'm doing research on it myself. You could have unconscious bias for anything, for hype. And I think that these terms and this awareness is good for the public to know and see and hear, because it is odd that there are only certain types of businesses in a certain sector of work. Why aren't there more African American businesses in construction? Why isn't there more people saying you should go into this? Our Native American businesses, Asian American businesses, Hispanic businesses. We need to encourage all of these people to contribute to a sector that might not be thought of as an industry that everybody would be into. Women-owned businesses. I try to work with young ladies and see if they are interested in the STEM-related field, more specifically the best one, construction. And, a lot of them are like, nah, I'm a girl. I'm like, okay, whoa, stop it there. Just because you're a woman doesn't mean you can't be in construction and be a boss, be in charge, be the CEO, own your own business. And I try to show them what that means, what it means to be in construction and run a business and or be in charge, especially in the commercial construction realm. I'll let Victoria add to it. No, I'll chatter away about this.
No, you're very well versed. And obviously Joeris puts their money, in their belief system. We've been, again, I mentioned the recipient of that and just support. But I did yesterday spend 3 hours at Warren High School. They have the Construction Careers Academy. And the future looks bright. It was diverse. I would say there were plenty of young ladies who were carpentry, of course, construction management. But just to see the confidence that came with that, they were toe to toe with their peers in the conversations with me. I think being a woman sitting there speaking to them about it, as it sounds like you do, Ellen, I think that is really such a big part of this, is that it's not so much paying back, it's just being an example, being comfortable in this space, setting that precedent for them. and just really excited to come back with a stack of resumes that are still developing, but there's definitely that interest. And I would say that generation will save us all probably, in terms of this conversation, the conversations we have to continue to have, disparity studies, that's definitely a term that's constantly thrown about. We had Bear County last night on a webinar. The SWIMBY goals, that's another popular term. But then you have, an HEB, Crystal Royale, and her kind of mentality about supplier diversity and how they really tackle that. So it's out there, it's happening. But yeah, it's still a conversation that needs to be pushed through.
Yeah, and these terms are they're all new to me. I know I've been doing a lot of reading, trying to do the work to become familiar with a lot of these terms, and they're constantly evolving. Like pronouns was new to me, and I thought I was on top of things, and so there's always work to be done to stay on top of these issues, and there's a lot of intersectionality. Whether it's race, ethnicity, and gender. And so diversity, right, includes more than just, so many people automatically will go to race, right? But it's not just that. And Ellen, when you were talking, I couldn't help but think about my background. So I'm originally from a small town called Freer. It's 3,500 population. And you talk about exposing girls and girls, well, not women yet, but girls to STEM and to these other these career opportunities. I never thought growing up, oh, I can be in construction. It was always very much, and Victoria, I don't know if you experienced this in the Latina culture, very much like, oh, you're going to be a doctor and you're going to be a lawyer and that's how you're going to do it, right? But there's no talk of these other opportunities. So what do you think, since you brought it up, Ellen, I'm just going to go there. What can we do to help these young girls and men consider construction for their career? How can we push that?
That's a great question. I feel like that's what I spend a lot of my time working on. Joeris builds a lot of schools, and so we were invested in working with them and then giving back to them. So we also are like, hey, do you want to work with us? You can do an internship. We are involved in a lot of those extracurricular activities. We helped with Warren, and we were on the advisory committee. And then we work with STEM mentor programs with young women. And I try to do outreach to different schools too. And it can be challenging though. There is a stigma to go to that normal, pop culture title. I'm a lawyer, I'm a doctor. It's like, well, those are great professions and we definitely need both of those. However, there's other options, and you can also get a degree in it. One time I had, when I was first starting out in this, now they know not to say these things, I guess, but, oh, I want to go to college. It's like, yeah, there's a degree in construction, just like architecture and engineering. And there's masters and doctorates. I mean, this is something that is a business. It's lots of money that you have to program through and funnel and make sure it's done correctly. It's like being a doctor for a house or for a building. You've got to know the bones, the guts, the skin, everything. So I think that more programs is going to be our key to success. And the teachers that are in facilitating those programs, educating parents, that's something that SAISD is working on with their PTech program. They have a new construction program that is also being geared towards targeting parents and educating them that, hey, this is a great profession, it pays well, job stability. So I think that's where we can do our work.
Yeah, and I would jump in there, Ellen, and say, so in your position and what you're doing to further that, and then I know of an example with the Lone Star Trades. They have a longer name, but they are a nonprofit made up of 2 women who are electricians. And you speak to these ladies, they are so passionate about So we're talking about young girls and even young men. And so what their goal is they're really focused on women in poverty, right? So someone that's at McDonald's getting paid $12 an hour, if they can help them, for a week, for 40 hours, they bring them in free of charge, teach them the electrical trade. And it's kind of one of those things, if it catches, if they like it, then there's like the next step to it. But they're like, we can change lives. We can change their life. We can change their children's lives. And I mean, you can really see the trajectory of that sort of thinking. So like you say, it's not just you or I or Maestro. It's like we need many different facets, because you have to appeal to just all different sorts. And we can't be saying, our message often enough. So I think there need to be a lot of partners.
Yeah, I think we're obviously not going to solve it here, right? But it's great to put it out there and to put this into other people's minds that it is possible, and that it's something that we need to look to. Going back to the business side and the human side of diversity and inclusion. So business side, we know statistically speaking that the U.S. labor force currently is comprised of approximately 15 million people who self-identify as white. And we know that they will be leaving the workforce. And so we also know that the minority population is growing, and that eventually, minorities will be the new majority. And so how does this affect the industry? I mean, I feel like it's very obvious how it affects the industry. But if you could talk a little bit about that and how the industry can prepare for these demographic changes.
I'll let you lead this time, since I've the first two.
Let's see. So what comes to mind is certainly we are approached a lot about subcontractors that have some sort of certification in a minority or women-owned or small business. I mean, there's all kinds of acronyms, and we get those phone calls probably daily. Do you have someone that does this? Do you have some? Again, different companies, different larger GCs trying to meet their goals, whether they are, federal goal or it's just an internal. I think that is just it seems to be a constant conversation that we're asked to help, contribute to. So then on the other side, we have just recently, we have a new member. She herself has been in the construction industry and recently, and is doing great, but recently her husband came on board to help her kind of take it to that next level, to get certified, there's a lot of husband and wife teams making this happen. And I think the way that I see us bringing them to the table more prepared, whether it be with bonding or certifications or, at the end of the day, their financials or cash flow, is to really, yes, support, yes, offer programs. All of that is super important. But what I see more often than not is just telling them, you can do this. They're entrepreneurs at heart. They know their trades typically, and they figure the rest of the stuff out. But I tell you, it's just day in and day out, Tracy and I love to just encourage and kind of show them what they've done and where they're going, and then put them in touch, with the Ellens and the Crystals and the SCTRCA, Charles John, just constantly, Maestro, just constantly having these conversations about the resources out there. And that's where I see us moving the needle and offering this workforce that is prepared, that's ready to step up. So that's kind of where I'm thinking with that.
So with that, I worked I interned back in the day with Ken's 5, and I was working the morning show, and they literally said that the new babies coming this year will help make the minorities the majorities. And he asked that hard question, do you think this will help with immigration, racism, this, that, and the other. And it caused a lot of controversy. Made people calling and writing, and it's too early for this. Why do you have to make it about this? Why do you have to make it about that? And that's what I love about today. We're having these conversations and it's okay. Nobody's getting upset. However, that was over 10 years ago, and we're still having this conversation. So what are we doing about it? How are we making that change? Joeris started a Women Lift program. So it's a group of people to talk about, disparities and gender equality and lifting up people here in this company into positions so that we have backups for our next leadership. That way we're making sure to constantly make that stream happen. Now, that is still pretty new. I'm so proud that it's happening. What will we do for the future is a good question too. Are we starting to just now prepare for the future? Will this get us ready for the future to come when it's the majority? Or will we go to a time where there's going to be an uber wealthy and an uber not wealthy group? It makes me happy to know that we're having these conversations, because it makes me think that we're not going to have those two disparities. I think that, what were you going to say, Leslie?
Well, I think what you're saying is right, because it's easy to say we're going to be the majority. And so, but are we prepared for
Yes.
those, right? As minorities, are we preparing our workforce for those jobs? And so it's twofold that we, are they ready? Are we ready?
Mm-hmm.
We have to be, we have to meet in the middle. We have to meet in the middle. And so that was a great point, Ellen.
Yeah, so if we keep doing programs like Maestro, Hispanic Contractor Association, Women in Construction, Black Contractor Association, et cetera, I think that it'll help us stay prepared. And I think that it'll also help people have a group, an outlet. I read this book called Freakonomics, and it's interesting. Have you read that?
With the orange and the,
Yes.
I remember that
Yeah.
cover. I didn't read it all, but I remember the cover.
It's so good. Oh, it's so good. But there's one piece of that book that I'm always like, There was a economic professor who was studying a group of drug dealers in Chicago, and he randomly stumbled upon them and was like, "Can I study you for my economics paper?" And there was a leader of the little, street corner crew, and he was talking about how he had a degree in marketing. He got a job in a marketing firm, and he quit because he didn't feel like he felt like he didn't fit in. And it was because he said, "I was the only one who looked like me. I was the only one who talked like me. I had to quit. I didn't fit in." And he went to a life of crime. And it's like, well, maybe we need to make sure that that doesn't happen in our communities. We need to be like, "Oh no, son, we're coming in there too. We're getting a job with you as well." We don't need to resort back to old habits of where we fit in.
Exactly. And I think that also leads into the next talking point of, so what's the business case for inclusion and diversity? And like you mentioned in that Freakonomics book, innovation, revenue, long-term sustainability. So could you expand more on creating those work environments and really, making sure that businesses as well know that this is a win-win for them?
Well, I know for our part, seeing that light kind of go on when they understand that the process is not really that difficult. Like once you kind of get to that vantage point and your view is a little more on the level, you realize it's not rocket science. If I do this and get things in this order, then I can be part of that circle. And then I think the other piece of that is once these larger ones that have arrived, I think the trick is to get them to give back, to tell the others, hey, the view's pretty good up here. We're fine. We can do this. We can manage. We can show up for, like we're saying, this need, this conversation. We can be the people that fill that need. So I think that's a really important part of it too. What's another book, Ellen? I love books. Trying to read your bookshelf.
Speaking, I read somewhere, statistically speaking, those who have the more diverse workforce are more successful.
I believe that.
They profit more.
Mhm.
And it's like, wow, you see these numbers, they're profiting more. Maybe
Mhm.
we should do what they're
We try
doing.
to-
Maybe we should try this. We're gonna make more
Mhm.
money because we have different people thinking different ways. Oh, I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
Oh, because
And
of groupthink, we did all
Yeah.
these wars. Oh, what? Maybe we should be more diverse.
But I'm sure Ellen, that some will set up that department, give them the title, and then it's just a little bit hollowed out. There's
Yeah.
not really the sentiment behind it, but there's not the time given, even the seat at the table. I'm sure you're at many a table that you need to be part of that discussion and really add to that conversation, and that's the value. It's not just creating the role and having that checked off.
Yes.
would you agree that the stance is now, it has now transitioned from assimilate, right, to now accept people, or well, it switched from assimilate into this role and act a certain way and be a certain way and think a certain way, to now accepting people for who they are in all their diversity and their culture different. And that leads to innovation, which leads to revenue, which is the business case for diversity and inclusion. Would you all agree with that?
Yes.
Yes.
Completely. Yeah.
Yeah,
Very
definitely.
well said. Backing up what you're saying. Don't expect I see these articles and they break my heart, and I haven't seen it in a while, where you see these two little girls who were sent home for their hair being a certain type of way.
Oh gosh.
And then you think about that and it's like, well, if I want to get a job, should I cut the dreads? Should I, not wear my favorite, bright colored suit that's normal in my culture and my group, or should I try to look like these people and speak like them, because that'll help me fit in more, and then I'll get the job, or I'll keep it, or I'll get that promotion and they'll let me be at the table. It's a good conversation to have. I think the more awareness we have towards our unconscious bias, they say that in order for the species to survive, we stay in cruise control. So that means that we're immediately going to jump to conclusions. And sometimes that's not good for diversity, because when you jump to conclusions, usually it's based on stereotypes that are not necessarily true. So,
and I think part of that though is reverse bias also. We assume that someone doesn't want us to chime in or be part of the conversation, and we can't assume that. Again, Joeris is a great example of that. You would expect, oh, they're so successful and they do so, they're not really interested in who doesn't have enough, or what they don't, they haven't arrived. I don't see that at all. So I think that needs to stay open also.
Yeah. Fear that you won't be accepted.
Right.
Stop you from even, you miss all the shots you don't take.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's a no if you don't ask. Yeah, definitely.
I'll go ahead and end this session with final thoughts. What is your hope for the future of D&I in the construction?
Well, I know it's going to rely on it. And I know there's a lot of conversations, like Ellen was saying, a lot of good conversations, but it's going to take a lot of us to actually bring those to reality and make sure everybody's getting the message. Kind of like right now with the shots, like, go get your shot. Everybody needs to get their shot. So yeah, I see the future. Again, I spent time with high schoolers yesterday. I think the future's bright. It looks very diverse. It looks very motivated and wants to be part of the conversation. So I'm very positive about it. I'm happy to be where I'm at and working with people like you both and the others that are on this session. So I'm positive that it's going to go well.
Me too. I was watching Hamilton last night. And there's a song the sisters sing, how lucky we are to be alive right now, like history is happening. And it's still very relevant to today. It's like, wow, like we're really trying, diversity and inclusion matters. Like, let's not keep repeating the same mistakes, and let's have a revolution and change. And I agree. I think that social media has its minuses, but it has its pluses. So we're starting to become more aware. We're able to share more information, share more thoughts. We're able to say, ooh, that's kind of offensive. And yes, people are saying it's a bit of a cancel culture, which we want to kind of stay away from, but it's also kind of more like, that probably always hurt their feelings. And instead they went home and cried, and now they're just standing up for themselves. I love it. I love it. I think it's great. The future's bright. And I think for D&I, where it's going to go is it'll eventually just become a business. Instead of putting D&I in front of it, it'll just be business manager, business director, and then just maintaining what we're already doing.
Definitely.
So I have some feedback. I feel like the construction industry is one of the dinosaurs in this area. It is great that we are able to have this conversation now. I have been recently told that I will never be a construction project manager, and it is because I'm a female. I requested to attend a PM school and was told that I could only if I was planning to use it to teach and train upcoming real PMs. This is the world we live in, but it is so motivating to listen to what you professionals have shared today. Thank you. Wow, I just got chills right
I gotta know.
And this is why we have these conversations. We create this space to have conversations, and 30 minutes isn't long enough to delve in. But if you have more questions and more feedback, I will be creating a topic in our community section on Whova with the recording, and feel free and type any questions. Ellen and Victoria, I hope that you'll pop on and answer questions and interact with our attendees. And I want to thank you both so much for coming on this session and sharing your thoughts with us, and for volunteering your time and your expertise. Y'all are amazing, and I'm so glad to have met you in this process.
Thank you for having us.
Of course. And thank you all for attending, and stay tuned for our next session, which should be our keynote address for today. So we'll see you then.
Thank you. Bye, Ellen. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Take care.
Good to see
Bye-bye.
you.